always knew it had gold, but it had never really
Also, they're hella tall. South Sudan, the youngest country on the planet. Also happens to be the tallest country, I think, on the planet too.
explored. You arrive at Dubai International Airport. You are carrying a bag full of gold. I mean full. Gold bars, jewelry, chunks of raw, unrefined gold, full. Everyone from your flight walks towards passport control, but you wheel your carry-on bag the other way, towards the transit terminal. You sit down at a cafe, and a short while later, another traveler appears. He puts his bag down, picks yours up, and walks the other way. You finish your coffee, pick up his bag, and board the next flight back to where you just came from. You don't open the bag, but you know that inside is $2.5 million in cash. I know, it sounds like a bank heist, right? But this is how more than 400 tons of smuggled gold enters the UAE every year from Africa, worth around $30 billion. And here's the thing, once that smuggled gold is melted, refined, and sold on the market in Dubai, it becomes 100% legal. As a new gold rush is taking over the world, driving up the price of gold to historic levels, the UAE has strategically turned itself into a global hub for gold and gold laundering, and has done this partly through financing civil war in Africa, and in particular Sudan, where a brutal all-out war has waged for more than a year between the country's military and a rogue mercenary army that's figured out how to exchange gold for weapons. Now, the UAE's role in Africa is complicated. It's a weave of land purchases, regional influence, and access to the vital trade routes along the Red Sea. But the unfettered flow of gold has become the grease that oils its relationship with Sudan and its neighbors. A flow that continues unabated by war or political turmoil. So, how is this happening? And how is it fueling the war in Sudan? My name is Mohammed Hassan, and this is The Big Picture. Here's a graph that tells a story. It shows the price of gold over the last 50 years. What do you notice? Put simply, there's so much anxiety right now around the world and around the future of the global economy. The power of the petrodollar is waning, with the Middle East increasingly unstable, and more countries are looking to abandon the US currency altogether. In particular, I'm talking about China, India, and Russia. And so central banks around the world are reacting, and they've started looking for an independent currency that can secure their monetary reserves. Hence, we want the gold, sucker! But there's one problem. Gold is not like the US dollar or even Bitcoin. It's real. And it's heavy. That means it has to be physically moved from one place to another. If you want to buy gold, you have to go to where it's being sold. That's where Dubai comes in. It's had a gold souk since the early 90s.
By the way, the easiest way to cut this out in its entirety is if, instead of directly sanctioning the RSF, as they have done so already, they just directly sanction the UAE. Obviously, it's never going to happen, but this gold for weapons scheme that they've designed could be cut short if America stopped, one, giving weapons to the UAE, or at the very least abided by the pre-existing contracts that they have, like the Leahy Law, that declares weapons that find themselves in the hands of like known terrorist organizations or organizations that are engaging in are at odds with U.S. law, existing U.S. law, and therefore they shouldn't be able to do that. There's also Chinese weapons as well. There's Israeli weapons as well. But once again, like, it's not all coming from China, and America has a lot of power here. The problem, of course, is that America doesn't give a shit. America doesn't give a shit about Sudan, and America doesn't give a shit that the UAE is doing it. I don't know if they're directly getting a cut out of it, but I'm sure it plays a role in it as well.
1900s, but when the country had its oil boom in the 1970s, it started attracting people from all around the world. It built its airport, became a playground for the rich and famous, and its gold market grew and grew. With a 0% tariff on bringing gold into the country, it quickly became the ideal place to import, refine, and sell. Today, the so-called City of Gold is home to more than 20 gold refiners and 7,000 gold traders. It imports more than 1,000 tons of gold each year, and 2/3 of that comes from Africa. But here is where the problem begins.
Most of the important airports in Africa have regular flights to Dubai, so it's also very convenient for traders to go there. And when they get there, they have very easy access to companies that are willing to buy the gold they're carrying. A good part of this gold is carried with hand luggage, and once again, it's not being checked upon import. And thanks to corruption and other mechanisms, it's also sometimes not, very often actually, not checked upon export in the African countries. So they can get away with controls at the borders. It works quite effectively.
Yuvan Schultz worked on a report earlier this year that looked at the gold transferred between Africa and the UAE. This is how much gold African countries are saying they're exporting to the UAE. But this is how much gold from African countries in 2022. There is more than 400 tons of gold missing there. According to Schultz, this is a clear sign that gold was smuggled. But why? Despite the large gold reserves in Africa, many countries were caught off guard by the sudden spike in demand for gold over the last 2 decades. They didn't have the infrastructure, the equipment, or the laws in place to regulate gold mining on an industrial scale. That left a huge vacuum that was filled by artisanal and small-scale gold miners, or ASM. If you owned a piece of land that had gold on it, you could pay a private company to explore, mine, and transport that gold on your behalf. And of course, given what you're exporting is pretty valuable, that company probably needs to have its own form of security. And that's a polite way of saying a militia.
And when you have a very volatile situation or even an armed conflict like in Sudan, then of course you have these armed groups that seek to take control of the mines and enrich themselves by trading the yellow metal.
Yeah, I mean, if you had a stable government, then you would be able to extract your natural resources and be able to redistribute the capital that comes from the extraction process, be able to pay better for your workers that are engaging in the process of extraction. But of course, that would mean that this gold would be far more costly, and the profits for those who are basically fencing this gold would be far slimmer. Yeah, that doesn't even happen in stable African countries. I know, but I'm just saying.
And that's typically what we're observing at the moment in Sudan.
Sudan has been in a state of near constant war for decades, and its former leader, Omar al-Bashir, fueled the conflict by empowering both the military as well as regional mercenary groups to help him quash anti-government rebellions in places like Darfur, where the worst of the fighting was taking place. In 2011, the international community stepped in, splitting the country along ethnic and religious lines and forming South Sudan. The problem was 75% of Sudan's large oil reserves were in the south, and overnight the government lost its single biggest source of income. Now, Sudan always knew it had gold, but it had never really...
Also, they're hella tall. South Sudan, the youngest country on the planet, also happens to be the tallest country, I think, on the planet too.
...explored it before. It also had a big problem. After the war in Darfur, crippling US sanctions meant that Sudan couldn't just hire international mining companies to help it set up its industry. So instead, al-Bashir handed out subsidized contracts to anyone who had the means to mine that gold. And most of those contracts went to generals and rebel leaders who'd helped him fight in Darfur. With so many actors and little to no official regulation, what should have become Sudan's burgeoning gold industry instead became ripe with corruption. In 2017, reports started reaching the country's trade ministry that Khartoum airport and the port of Sudan were being used to smuggle out gold, mostly heading to the UAE. In one example, a 2-ton barrel of sand samples being loaded onto an Emirates airline flight was found to be largely made up of raw gold. In another instance, a sick woman was driven to the door of her flight in an ambulance. But the paramedic who was helping her get onto her flight was caught trying to sneak gold bars he'd hidden inside of an oxygen cylinder into her bag. In 2018, Sudan's trade minister Musa Karama sounded the alarm.
مطار الخرطوم أكبر منفذ للتهريب وأنه في عام 2015 طلعت منه 102 طن.
Never eating Dubai chocolate again? Yeah. Fun fact, that's also, I believe, people are going to yell at me for saying this, but a Turkish invention. They just sell it as Dubai chocolate because nobody would buy it if you sold it as Turkish chocolate. I'm serious. No, I think it's literally because there was like Turkey has a pistachios, and that's like the primary unique ingredient in Dubai chocolate is the pistachio paste it has on the kunafa. Also, for the record, that's not even a new phenomenon. Look at Greek yogurt, brother. Like, it's not new for Turkey to literally sell something that they invented under a different regional actor's name.
من مطار الخرطوم ومطار دبي في الوقت اللي بتقول حكومة السودان انه انتاجها كله في هذا العام كان 70 طن فقط. لو ال 100 طن دي كلها جات لبنك السودان يعني الطن بحوالي 46 مليون دولار. يعني نتكلم عن 4 مليار ونص. ده أكثر من 50% من إجمالي وارداتنا يعني. دي براهن.
One of the biggest untapped mines in the country was Jebel Amr in North Darfur. It quickly fell into the hands of Hamitti, or Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, the leader of the Rapid Support Forces. The RSF was a paramilitary group that grew out of the Janjaweed militia, whose leaders had been charged by the International Criminal Court with committing dozens of in Darfur. Hamitti set up a private firm to oversee the gold production, Al Junaid Company, and left his brother in charge of it. The revenue from the gold would allow the RSF to expand, buy weapons, and make Hamitti one of the richest and most powerful men in Sudan.
The RSF is rich. They have business interests and business holdings that will build up the national bank. It is one rich family and they have their fingers in everything. And all their businesses are based in the UAE.
During his rise to power, Hamitti began fostering
I apologize. It was invented in Dubai. It's just produced in Turkey. And in January 2025, a German court in Cologne decided that Aldi has to stop selling his product name Ali and Dubai handmade chocolate on the ground that it might mislead consumers that the chocolate has been produced in Dubai while it's actually produced in Turkey. But no, it's invented by it was invented by Sarah Hamouda, a British Egyptian engineer living in Dubai at the time. Hamouda was pregnant, and through her food craving, she came in to imagine a combination of chocolate, pistachio, tahini, and kunefa, a Middle Eastern dessert made of khadif syrup and soft cheese. At home, Hamouda worked on developing a bar before contacting Noel Katis Omamalen, a Filipino culinary consultant who had trained as a pastry chef. In his account of Dubai Chocolate's creation, Omamalen said the pair wanted to create a chocolate bar with the flavor of a dessert. His favorite Arabic dessert was kunefa, and because he thought it would have an appealing crunch and nostalgic value, Omamalen suggested a chocolate bar using his flavors. Together, they developed the chocolate, forming a partnership in the online shop Fixed Dessert Chocolatier, which in 2022 launched Can't Get Kunefe of It. Can't Get Kunefe contained pistachio, tahini, and khadif, and was covered in yellow and green patterns. Bars are made by hand, and the interior is piped. The team working 6 to 8 hours produced 25 bars a day. It's actually fucking delicious. I'm not going to lie. I have had it. Only the Turkish one, though. Don't worry. And then it exploded in popularity over TikTok.
Close ties to the UAE, where most of his financial operations were based, as well as Russia, which had long been Sudan's main military supplier. Russia was gearing up for an invasion of Ukraine and had begun stockpiling gold to finance its war effort. Its Wagner mercenary group had been active in Sudan since 2014, helping secure mining operations and facilitating the smuggling of gold out of the country. When Omar al-Bashir was toppled by a popular uprising in 2019, that relationship continued to flourish. Just days after the start of the Ukraine invasion, a Russian cargo plane carrying boxes of cookies was inspected by Khartoum airport officials. Turns out they weren't cookies. It was actually a ton of pure gold. The flight was one of 16 that year, likely facilitated by Sudan's army and likely heading to a Russian military base in Syria. Sudan's transitional government, now headed by the army chief Abdel Fattah al-Burhan and Hamitti as his deputy, attempted to consolidate the gold sector. In 2020, it nationalized the lucrative Jebel Amr mine and bought it from Hamati's brother for $200 million, offering him an additional 33% of shares in Sudamin, the company set up to oversee gold mining. Not just that, but the RSF was assigned to secure the mine's operations, and this was a sign of what was to come. Despite promising to withdraw and allow the democratic process to take place, the Sudanese armed forces overthrew the transitional government and seized control in 2021. But quickly, with protests outraged by the coup taking over the country, the army struggled to control it. So they turned to Hamati for help.
The army couldn't hold on to security, so they invited the RSF into the capital to secure it for them, because they never thought the RSF would turn on them. Because of those miscalculations, we were at that point where Hamati actually believed that he could wage war and he could win this war.
Remember Wagner? Now, they had helped train RSF forces and actually recruited them to fight in another civil war in Libya a year earlier. Russia and the UAE, who were both deeply involved in Libya, were impressed by the RSF's fighting ability and began to see Hamati as the man they believed could rule Sudan, and the man who could secure the gold. 5 months earlier, the UAE had inked a deal to build Sudan a $6 billion port that would act as a special economic zone between the two countries, so it was very invested. The same year, the UAE imported 39 tons of gold directly from Sudan, valued at around $2 billion. But UN data suggests that another 20 tons of gold was smuggled from Sudan through Chad, Egypt, Ethiopia, and South Sudan. By the time war broke out again in April the following year, reports suggest that nearly all the gold that left Sudan's borders was flowing straight to Dubai. This picture was taken in March 2023. It shows Hamati shaking hands with Emirati ruler Mohammed bin Zayed during a long trip that he took to Abu Dhabi. During that trip, he also met with the other man in the photo,
Could be for any reason.
Deputy Prime Minister Sheikh Mansour, to discuss efforts to resolve the Sudanese crisis. But as soon as Hamati returned from that trip, he put his plan into action. On April 15, RSF forces entered Khartoum and attempted to take control. An all-out war was declared against the Sudanese armed forces, and Hamati made crystal clear his ambitions to take over. The war devastated Sudan, killing over 15,000 civilians and leaving more than 10 million displaced. The United Nations has called the situation a humanitarian nightmare. With 26 million people, that's half of all Sudanese, at risk of acute hunger. This in a country that's still exporting billions of dollars worth of gold every year.
We were dragged into this war. We had warned about it as activists, as members of civic society. We had warned about this. That's why we were always chanting, to the RSF needs to be dissolved, the army needs to be, pushed back from politics and so on. But we weren't listened to. We were cast aside, and we're the ones who are now paying the price. It's not the politicians, it's not the army generals, it's not the militia, it's us, For many of us, we've lost everything. And we can't even start from scratch because we're not being allowed to start from scratch. So it's just this sense of where do we now? And it was also that sense that no one actually cares. It's very disconcerting in a bit, as in, because I see people, for example, talking about Gaza the whole time. I'm all for it. But when you talk about Congo or Sudan or something else, they're like, oh, but it's between, it's between your own people. But they don't seem to understand that it's not between our two people. It's a proxy. We're being used as a proxy for other countries, and these other countries wield way too much power.
As the fighting in Sudan went on month after month, people started asking, where's Hamati getting all these weapons? All of these tanks and drones? Well, officials in Libya told us that the RSF allegedly have been armed on the Emiratis' behalf through Libyan proxies. The military shipments would be flown from Libyan airports to the Central African Republic, then driven overland into Darfur. Wagner Group, which has been working with the CAR's embattled government, had transported advanced weapons across the border into Sudan, including missiles and anti-aircraft systems. The same thing was happening in Chad, where cargo flights from the UAE have been landing on a daily basis in a remote border town, supplying powerful weapons and drones, treating injured RSF fighters, and airlifting some of them to military hospitals in Abu Dhabi. In Uganda, the leadership holds strong ties with Hamiti's family and the UAE. In August 2023, this video...
I don't know how recent this video is, but isn't Wagner kind of neutered now? Wagner restructured under a different name. They don't have the same level of power that they used to, but they still operate as a PMC, a private military contractor. It's, I think it's called Africa Corps or something. It's still the same shit, though. It's still...
was captured of a private plane belonging to a Ugandan company landing in Sudan's North Kordofan state. According to local sources, the plane had arrived from the UAE and was carrying Russian-made artillery rockets. Last November, Sudan's army generals called out the Emirates directly.
أما دولة الإمارات أنا ما قادر أنا أعرف منظمة إرهابية أعرف منظمة مافيا منظمة إجرامية لكن دولة مافيا أول مرة نسمع بها.
The UAE has denied these allegations, saying it was only providing humanitarian support and that it has consistently called for de-escalation, a ceasefire, and the initiation of diplomatic dialogue. The RSF has also denied it's getting weapons from the UAE. They say that they have their own means of accessing and transporting arms. And while ceasefire talks start and stop without any progress, Hamiti has continued his diplomatic visits to African neighbors, painting himself as the man trying to save Sudan.
أخاطبكم اليوم وبلادنا تشهد المزيد من نزيف الدماء بسبب حرب 15 أبريل اللعينة. هذه الحرب التي أشعلها فلول النظام السابق وأجبرنا على خوضها مكرهين. ويشهد الله أننا سعينا بصدق لتلافيها وتجنب بلادنا وويلاتها حتى وقع الهجوم الغادر علينا الذي لم يترك لنا خيارا سوى القتال دفاعا عن أنفسنا. ومن هنا ندعو إلى تشكيل لجنة تحقيق دولية لمعرفة من أشعل هذه الحرب ومحاسبته على جميع إفرازاتها.
Meanwhile, people in Khartoum are sharing stories of RSF soldiers breaking into their houses with metal detectors specifically designed to find gold. Last year, the US, UK, and several EU countries put sanctions on private companies belonging to the RSF and the Sudanese armed forces. They included the UAE-based gold mining company Al Junaid, run by Hamiti's brother, who was also placed under sanctions. Then in January 2025, the Biden administration extended those sanctions to Hamiti himself, accusing the RSF of committing genocide in Sudan. But despite efforts by Sudan's government to hold the UAE responsible, the International Court of Justice threw out their case in May because the UAE had opted out of a key article in the Genocide Convention, preventing them from being sued in the UN court.
It's a new form of land grab, of colonialism, call it what you want, but this is what's happening. And if you look at throughout the whole scale of Africa, from the Sahel to the Red Sea, that's what's been happening. You know, you don't wage wars because you can't afford to wage a war, but you will pay someone to wage that war for you. In return, you will have access to things that in your own country you do not have. I mean,
when will Israel use what's going on in Sudan to deflect from their crimes, try to further demonize Muslims? Seems like a hostile talking point. What do you mean? They already do it. They literally do it all the time. They will always say, what about Sudan? You don't care about Sudan. What about Sudan? They say it all the time. And Israel defenders do it all the time as well. All the way down to all the way down to Cory Booker. You do know that the Greek yogurt Turkish is only due to the Turks doing genocide against the Greeks. Yes, it's from Turkey, but the Greeks started it in Turkey. Okay, man. I mean, my family is Turkish from Greece, so.
Be blunt, the UAE does not have one single gold mine in their country. Yet they're the biggest dealers, wheelers and dealers.
Yogurt. That's the word. Yogurt. Like, goddamn, bro. Let the fucking Turks have something, you know? It's Turkic in origin. Nomadic motherfuckers who started doing it with the horse milk initially, okay? Does this sound Greek at all to you? Yoğurt.
In gold in the world right now. How can that be? It just, 1 + 1, the numbers don't lie, the evidence is.
Show us proof of Kaya. We don't see her. You mean proof of life of Kaya? She's currently on a fucking long ass walk. Pro-Israel crowd also lavishes praise on the UAE because they normalize relations with Israel and the Abraham Accords, all while UAE's primary funder of the RSF paramilitary. Yeah. The one who care about Africa as much as Gaza line is a cynical ADL talking point meant to heavily imply anti-Semitism through the messy work of having to show it. Booker is soullessly reciting a script. None of it makes sense or speaks to any of the underlying universalism. The highbrow version of this is Anne Applebaum suddenly deciding in 2025 to care about Sudan after never writing about it before, and front-loading her very serious report on it in The Atlantic with finger-wagging about how Gaza protesters don't ever talk about it, which many Gaza protesters do talk about it, by the way. They talk about Congo, they talk about Sudan, they do. It just doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter that they do. Just like it doesn't matter that I did as well. The extent of my coverage on Sudan, of course, due to my limited knowledge over it beyond, UAE involvement, is not because it's a less important issue, as I've said before, but more so because it's not directly involved with the United States of America. It's an indirect involvement that America has, as it has its fingers in every fucking pie, obviously. And this is no different.
There, and that's what's happening right now.
And you might be thinking, how can so much illegal gold flow into Dubai without anyone noticing? Well, that's because of a peculiar loophole in the way the gold market is regulated.
Once gold is imported into Dubai, it will be melted and refined. And through this process, gold will officially acquire a new origin. Its new origin will then be Dubai, even though it has been extracted from a mine in Sudan or perhaps in Mali or in Burkina Faso.
And while the UAE has introduced new rules on gold sourcing in 2023, experts say these are only cosmetic.
We already know from interviews that we've done with actors in the United Arab Emirates that the regulation has not been taken seriously.
Without a serious way to figure out where it's coming from, how it's obtained, and who's really selling it, the City of Gold has indeed become a global hub for gold laundering. And as the demand for gold and other precious metals continues to rise, the most powerful actors in the world are now engaged in a new scramble for Africa. A scramble that continues in peace and war, whatever the cost. Thank you for watching this episode of...
Anyway, the UAE is supplying the RSF from multiple bases around Africa and the region. In the west, there's Libya and Chad, and in the east, they have bases in Somalia's Puntland and Yemen's Socotra archipelago. They've been developing these networks for years. The UAE and RSF first became allies in 2018 during Yemen's civil war. The only real form of civil government left after the seizing of power and then after the war starting is resistance committees, which are just local councils trying to meet people's needs. Has Hassan addressed the Jabri video yet? Jabri made a new video about what? What do you make a video on?
The big...